This is episode number 376. WordPress comments.
No comment.
Brought to you by our friends over at ServerPress Makers Desktop Server. They make local WordPress development easy. Check them out over at serverpress.com. Hey, how's it going, everyone? How you doing?
I figured out how to mute myself during the intro.
I saw that. I may make you have to do the intro then.
Hey, peeps.
Yo, hello.
Hi, guys.
Hey guys.
Win on YouTube. Win on YouTube.
I had an extra shot in my coffee this morning. So, hi, I'm sorry.
We haven't noticed. We haven't noticed yet.
No one noticed.
So today we're going to be talking about comments in WordPress. I'd imagine we're probably going to dip in a little bit to comment systems, as well as just ways in which the built-in comments work as well. So let's get started with that. Say you're the one that brought this up. Start us off a little bit.
No, it was Cosper.
It was Cosper? Cosper!
It
Tell
was
us.
Cosper.
Do I have to?
I suppose you don't have to.
Who are these people? Who's this guy? Who's that guy in the great sweater?
Yeah, who is that?
Thank you.
John, introduce yourself real quick.
John James Jacoby, WordPress core contributor, security team member. I work at Sandhills on Sugar Calendar and Easy Digital Downloads and some other stuff.
Sugar Calendar.
Awesome,
I haven't
man.
looked at that in a while.
You should look at it. It's awesome. It's gotten
I
way
know.
better.
I always like, whenever I like hear about a plugin, I was like, oh yeah, I should look at that. Oh, haven't heard of that one. I'll go check it out.
Sugarcalendar.com.
Check. It's got a good name.
Let's have a good name.
It's like, give me some sugar. I am your neighbor. Okay. Anyway.
Speaking of comments
that's
real
who that
fast,
is.
if you do want to leave a comment, you can definitely leave a comment in our chat boxes on the various places in which we're streaming this live. So feel free to
Happy
do that.
Friday, Greg.
Happy Friday.
Anyway, Cosper, what were you going to say?
Yeah. So, there's been kind of a slow discussion around comments in WordPress and kind of rethinking comments in WordPress. I know that both in the past month or two, both Jeremy Felt and Chris Coyer have both kind of talked about their comment wish lists.
Google them. It'll be in the show notes.
It will be in the show notes. I'm sure that Jason will momentarily be clicking us over to their blog posts with that fancy slide to the side effect.
Here. So we haven't talked about this in a while. Because everyone kind of forget. Does everyone just forget about comments?
No.
I just turn them off and never think about them again.
No.
Every time. Every install. Every single one.
I'm currently migrating a site that has been in existence for 11 years. It has 7 million comments in the database. Million.
Oh, my good golly heck, that's a lot of nonsense.
Is that all?
Yeah.
That's a lot of epiphany.
I get a lot of spam comments that way. About 7 million.
So these are actual comments. That's after filtering out spam.
Wow, dude.
That's incredible. That's amazing.
And people are like, we need those. Those are important. Why are you taking them with you?
Yeah, they want to port those over. That's all part of their community and their conversation.
Wow.
So
because it shows engagement.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
So I'm
think glad they're not my client. I don't want them. You can keep them.
So, Cosper, here's that article that you were referencing that Jeremy Felt wrote.
Yeah. So and look at you with the Big Sur going on right now. I noticed the nice window chrome there. Fancy.
Yep.
Cutting edge.
Is that the new OS?
Yeah.
I'm out of now. I don't know anything about that.
So
anyway,
I think some of these ideas are really interesting. That first one where comments should be private, I think is actually a clever idea. I know a lot of people fall back on having like a forms plugin on their site, for contact us. But I mean, it almost, of course, there are a lot of things you can do with forms, but sometimes when you just want feedback from somebody, not having to install a forms plugin just by having private comments is actually kind of an interesting idea there. There have been ideas about also like going a little further down the page, notified of comment interactions. There's been some socialization stuff around that with what was the name of that plugin? I know that they used it on
Discuss?
WP Tavern. No. There was please not discuss.
A discus, depending on
Let's not
who you
discuss
are.
that.
No,
I like discus. Let's not discuss that.
I think Postmatic had.
Yeah,
Was that the name? Yeah.
yeah, Postmatic.
Yeah, when Jeffro was working on the tavern on WP Tavern, I know that he put that in place to kind of help have a little bit more community oriented, discussion around there. Here's another one, a mention of web mentions, which
I love the word web mention, just for the record. I want to web mention you.
So web mentions are interesting. They are effectively like the next generation of pingbacks and trackbacks. Two things which I actually can't fucking stand. But when Say says she disables comments on sites, I mainly disable pingbacks and trackbacks. It's really interesting when you get mentioned on a site that tends to get its content ripped off and republished on other sites. You start getting pingbacks and trackbacks for all of these other like content farm sort of sites. So I don't necessarily like them, but web mentions are interesting in that they are a little wider in scope, to the extent where stuff that gets mentioned in social channels, Twitter, things like that, can come back and be linked up on your site. So when someone mentions your site, like a web mention, as long as the support for it is enabled, you can actually see when people are talking about your stuff on.
Yeah, we use that on WPwatercooler. We have the IndieWeb plugin called Web Mentions running. So when someone mentions us on social media, it comes in as a comment. So it just makes it a lot easier for everything to kind of all happen in there, all in one shot. So it's nice and easy to look to see that there's actually some, maybe stuff isn't on site, but at least you do have some comments that are happening.
Yeah. So
All right.
I don't want to sit here and just rehash the whole post, but
you don't want to read an article on air for the entire half hour? That's weird.
Yeah, I know. We're almost 10 minutes into the show.
It's like I got bored and started singing Old MacDonald in the chat or something.
So what has WordPress done so far with comments, and where are we at currently in the built-in commenting system that we already have? Because there's plenty of third-party plugins that have added additional functionality to comments. But it seems like a lot of them are essentially trying to get you to work with their ecosystem, and they're just kind of bringing some of that to the forefront on your website versus like WordPress itself actually managing those comments. And also some of those like ones that, like we were just discussing, are the ones that where they'll go and save those in WordPress's comment system as well. So that way, if you ever leave that comment system, you'll be able to continue to have those comments natively within WordPress.
God, the idea of taking 10-year-old comments around with you on a site just makes me feel like heavy, like physically heavy. I'm just like, I'm weighed down by that.
Well, I don't feel like it would be inaccurate to call the state of comments in WordPress like neglected. Frankly, like
accurate.
There are lots of things that have been proposed for comments that just have never happened, that no one has put energy towards, or that like the people that have tried to put energy towards them have kind of just been shot down, or it kind of fizzled out in favor of other priorities, like the idea of private comments, like comment statuses and custom comment types, and those kind of things. Like these are years and years old, where some effort has gone into them, and then eventually some like kind of deep seated blocker is somebody finds something that's like, oh, this needs somebody to make a decision, and then that decision never happens.
Oh well,
and
we're
then
done now. No more decisions.
And then it sits, and then it's nothing happens. So they're neglected.
No one wants it in their release. Everyone's
what
like,
about
no,
comment format? We definitely need a comment format. You know, if we were doing post formats that we're not using, it'd be good to have a comment format that we're not using too. Video
that we're not
audio
using.
Yeah,
that we're not using.
Never use it. That's exactly. A good idea. So if it's, I mean, when do you think, if you don't know, or maybe you know, when was the last time comments was updated in core in any way?
Well,
I'm just curious.
I bet it got a little bit like the edit comment UI got like some fixes in 5.2 or something. Like there were weird styling issues that the comment form has, like on the admin side, that it has always had, that got fixed. So it has been touched, you know, like in the past year, I guess. But I wouldn't call it like fixed or repaired or upgraded or made. It's not really an improvement. These are just like somebody noticed that there was a line where there shouldn't be, or the pixels were off, or a label didn't make sense,
just
or something.
Keeping
like
it alive, basically.
Basically, yeah, right.
The last
like in a
time
nursing home. Everyone forgot about it.
The last time I saw any serious stuff around comments, when I was diving through the make blogs, like while doing a little research before the show, was I think 4.6. Rachel Baker led a charge on some comment stuff, but I mean 4.6. Come on,
4.6.
Dude, we almost had weblog. We almost had our link list was still back in that era with the blog roll, right?
My God, blog roll. Hadn't thought about blog roll in a while. Blog roll always makes me think of that Christmas cake that's like rolled up.
Yeah.
So do you think the reason why there hasn't?
I agree.
Do you think the reason why that it hasn't been updated all that much is because of the fact that maybe like Jetpack has put in some some effort into some of the additional kind of functionality that people use within WordPress?
Feisty.
I mean, I think that is possible, but I think it might contribute to it, but I think it's more likely that, like, kind of like what we were sort of talking about in the pre-show, is like most people just started turning comments off. Like comments just fell out of favor for a number of years, where it wasn't a thing that most people used, and so most people didn't put energy towards it. Like nobody worked on it because nobody was using it. So it kind of became cool to turn comments off. Like, I can't even deal with it. Comments are just so terrible, I'll turn them off. And like when that's what happens to a major feature, people just stop using it. So, but then eventually, 5 years goes by and we all get nostalgic for comments again, and then it has a resurgence, right? And so we are kind of seeing that. Like, we want to start opening comments back up again and having blogging like it used to be, and turning comments on was kind of a way to get there. So hopefully comments sees a little bit of attention because it needs it.
Or maybe people are getting better at comments now because of like Facebook, and like, people are used to having kind of that dialogue and that back and forth, because really that's more, I mean, that's not like new, but people are like really good at it now versus 5-10 years ago, it was like not so much thing. Steve doesn't agree with me, but I just wanted to say, for the record, when I was instructing people on installing WordPress, I literally had it in my instructional like guidelines to where to go and to disable comments as one of the first things you would do. So I was literally teaching people to do that.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. I just think it's different. I think because of the rise of social media, right? It made it so that comments just weren't as important on your own site, right? You wanted to put the discussion where the people were, right? And so the discussion just sort of naturally moved over to social media and away from your site, because that's where the people were, which is why that, for a while, a lot of my clients were installing that Facebook comments.
Facebook comments.
Facebook comments is terrible. I mean, talk about awful, right? The problem with Facebook comments is, it works like it's supposed to, like it's intended. It's just confusing, right? It's because am I in Facebook?
Am I on Facebook?
Where are the comments living? What's happening here, right? So, the discussion sort of naturally moved over to social media. I think it's naturally now moving away from social media, right?
Because everyone hates it.
It's a cyclical business, right? What's old is new again. And social media is, I'm not trying to open up a political discussion here, but people are trending away from it because it's
politicized. It is being politicized,
censored, say whatever, pick a word, right? People are moving away from it back to
made terrible,
self-hosted,
degrading,
stuff. Yeah,
disintegrating.
WordPress comments have a number of intrinsic problems, and since everyone's had them turned off for so long, I think everyone kind of forgets that those problems exist. And so then you turn them back on and you're like, oh yeah, this really is kind of a terrible experience for everybody. But the interesting thing about WordPress comments is if you are allowing unauthenticated database write access to some database on your server, unfettered, you have to install something else like a Kismet in order to get in the middle of that and have some stoppage of this form, just writing itself in forever. But then, one of Chris Coyer's points in his blog post was that as a commenter on a blog, you have no ownership over your own content. You're submitting your comment to someone else's website, and then it's not yours anymore. And so the admin for that site can edit your comment, but you cannot. And so you're giving someone control over your identity and your thoughts, and you don't have anything else to say about it. And then the problem of identity is sort of originally what Facebook and all those commenting systems tried to solve was well, there's no proof that it's me over here saying these things, and so I have to attach my identity to it somehow. In order to do that, you have to take some credible source of an identity like Facebook, I guess, and put your name on it and call that you. But if you're going to do that, then everyone just ends up replacing comments wholesale because it solves all of the problems of ownership, editing, and identity.
Right.
And without those things in WordPress core, we end up kind of back where we started, where anyone can write to your database. There's no evidence or to support that the person that's in there is actually the person who says that they are. And then you don't get to go back and do anything about it. It's up to the site owner to be responsible with it. It just isn't very pleasant for anyone, ultimately.
So really,
there's a lot that needs to happen.
Gravatar is not widespread enough, despite what people would like. It's not a solution.
And Gravatar is its own Pandora's box. Frankly, is there's a WordPress core track ticket somewhere that someone can find and link to that I've had some opinions on, where on one end of a discussion, Gravatar is this really important piece of open web software that allows you to put your face on your stuff, right? On your GitHub account, your Xbox Live account, wherever it's integrated, there's your face. And that solves a real problem where that if it's that picture, that it's probably that person. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, it is also true that Gravatars are a very convenient tracking pixel. And so anywhere that hash exists, or anywhere that my picture gets funneled through, they know that request has gone through to Gravatar server, and that they see it before anybody else does, and they get to track you around the web for free. And you've never really had to check the box necessarily that's what you're agreeing to. So and it's baked into WordPress. So every time you spin up a local development site, guess who gets to see where the mystery man is coming from? When you start working on whitehouse.local and you're working on the next cool WordPress site, and your mystery man goes out to Gravatar to figure out who that is and who's building that, guess who gets to see that? And
Matt.
without you necessarily having, click the box to agree to that. So
I want to. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Go ahead, Steve. No, go ahead.
I just want to circle back because you said a lot there. You talked about technical issues, then you talked about sort of your content ownership issues. I want to circle back to the tech for a second. You mentioned the security issue, which I think is important, right? But there's also a scalability issue when it comes to comments, right? And so comments are very database intensive, right? And they also bypass the natural caching, right, of a managed host, right? And so there's a huge scalability issue when it comes to hosting your own comments on your WordPress site. So just enabling comments, you automatically have a scalability issue that you just introduced on your website.
Definitely.
I'm just going to go ahead and say that's the reason I've turned off comments on all of my sites.
Yeah, let's go with that. Right, let's go with that. But
I'm very intelligent.
Most people won't notice it until they start to have a spike in traffic or a spike really in discussion, right? So if discussion blows up on one post, your site could just go down if you're not prepared for that, right? So so the comments is a natural kind of Achilles heel from a scalability standpoint for your WordPress site.
I would just say it's not just scalability, all across the board.
It's the same thing if you're hosting an e-commerce site or a membership site. Anything with a login becomes a scalability issue, and comments is immediate. And
it's too bad that is the state of where we are, frankly. Like still, because hosts are highly optimized for like cached views. But the problem is that is such an easy problem to optimize for. And like websites that are only reads, that has been a solved problem for almost all of WordPress's like recent 15-year existence. And so like hosts that don't have views figured out are not even trying. But the ones that right, and like the something like comments, like WordPress has caching on, like internally, it does as much as it can to make it perform well. It is only the fact that web hosts have not tried to optimize for a more dynamic type of WordPress site. And that's it most recently with stores and with the popularity of WooCommerce, but frankly, like BuddyPress and BBPress have always had this problem because they're always registered and logged in users, and they are deeply hierarchical data, and they are lots of reads, lots of database writes to recalculate how things work. And so comments is everyone's first introduction to like, wow, we do not know how to host comments and interactive websites, but anything else is exponentially worse. And so it's just bizarre to me that this long into WordPress's life that most web hosts haven't really nailed down a really amazing experience with comments on and more sophisticated WordPress powered websites.
Interestingly enough, also, I don't want to step on you, sorry, but correct me if I'm wrong. You brought up WooCommerce. Aren't reviews stored as comments?
That was exactly what I was gonna say.
Well, as well as order notes. So all of your order notes are stored as comments as well. So if you have a plugin that is adding extra order notes, your comments database is going to be huge, fast.
Correct.
Absolutely.
So how is it?
There's a lot of things that are
What the
just.
hell? Are you kidding me?
Why is the WooCommerce team not? Yes. Why is the WooCommerce team not paying more attention to comments then? Because it seems to me that's like, that even though comments itself is kind of like it's kind of over there, it doesn't really affect anyone's like major money making things, but obviously reviews and WooCommerce does. So it feels like that maybe should be the space where that comes from. Is there any action happening?
My thinking was that they were just looking for a spot in the database to put shit. This isn't being used much, so let's put it there.
You guys, Jason is freaking out over here.
Explain to me for a second. So, what is in one of those what is in one of those order notes that is essentially just kind of floating around with a bunch of comments that are benign?
So, an order note is anything it's a log. right? So anything that happens in the order in WooCommerce, a payment was processed, a payment failed, somebody added a private note in the order.
You can actually add notes.
Yeah, those are all comments. Those all go in they're stored in the comments database.
This
so
is
seriously,
this is
what's
how
wrong with the WooCommerce team? Like, why are they
You guys
not
use this
like,
thing? I don't understand. This is crazy.
this is how ignored comments have been.
your face?
Nobody's noticed. Nobody's noticed till now because everybody's got their comments turned off.
So wait, so you're telling me that there is
Interview.
a comment format? There is a comment format, and it's called an order note.
And reviews. And reviews.
I'm sorry if any of you are like deeply integrated in this WooCommerce thing. I do not use WooCommerce. I don't code for WooCommerce. I don't build anybody's WooCommerce sites. But when I hear stuff like that, holy crap, dude! Are you kidding me? That is just crazy.
If you have a WooCommerce site that's doing a good amount of sales, your comments database is ginormous.
Yeah,
Oh my
huge.
God.
That's funny.
And-
That is like
and
a
it's-
like
So we need a
problem of
discuss for
stacking
this
up that
then.
no one can see happening, and it's like this giant
Mhm.
pile, and you like open the door, and it's like falls on you. Like that's what it is.
And I
Hoarding.
genuinely think
It's
that,
a
like, this
digital
isn't-
hoarding.
Right. It is back
Yeah,
to
John?
that again, right? I genuinely think it's like not malicious, and it's not people being lazy. It's kind of developers doing what everyone for a long time told them was the right thing to do, which is like find a place to put this that is like a very WordPress place for it to be. And like,
The
do you want to
WordPress
clog up the
way.
posts table? No, it shouldn't be a post. If it's related to another post, then it should probably be a comment because it's only ever related to a comment. You'll query for it on its own. And like you're just spreading the pain around, right? Like it's kind of smart.
Which incidentally means that redoing or touching or fixing or getting into comments is going to be exponentially more complicated because of that. Like WooCommerce is no small part of the WordPress ecosystem. So, you know, I mean, it's listed on W3, whatever the thing is, as its own like entity. Like WooCommerce is listed there. So like that means that in order to fix the commenting, that needs a hell of a lot of engagement from WooCommerce. I mean, and that's straight automatic at this point. So, and then automatic is like, hey, Jetpack and Kismet. So maybe that's not happening. Maybe that's part of the problem. Or maybe it's just like we need to start uniting people together and bring it up more like this.
I'm still dumbfounded, to be perfectly honest.
Jason can't handle it.
Look, the WordPress database, if you just have a vanilla WordPress install, it's 11 tables, right? That's it. And so there's not a lot of choices as to where to put stuff, right?
Right, exactly.
I mean, there could have been like a 12th table that could have had like some good
It's got
indexing.
one closet.
The way-
It's basically
the
a junk drawer. It's
No,
a junk
the
drawer.
way to solve this is to have some sort of an interface, a developer interface that allows you to add new tables to the database in a standardized format to use for your particular plugin or extension.
Oh
But nothing
my
like
God.
that existed, right? So that's really the core problem here from a scalability standpoint. I don't want to get too far off on a tangent here, but the
you do.
other issue is post meta, right? So many plugins and things just shove stuff in post meta, and that table is not indexed, right? And so again, I know this is more for the developer track, but because of that, when you've got a large post meta table, your site slows to a crawl, and it's a very simple problem.
We only have like a minute, so I want to know, John, do you know of, is there any action here? Like, you know, there's been a little bit of movement on the commentary side, which we showed from some of those articles. Is that, and Cosper, you said it's a slow discussion that's been happening. Is there any movement on the horizon? Is there any, is anyone looking into maybe tackling that? Is anyone talking about 5.7 tackling that? Or is anyone of actual core competency approaching that conversation? Or is everyone just like, I ain't touching that?
No, it's starting to happen. Like you said, I think it's a little bit slow, and because it's not like a WordPress core focus, that everyone's going where the focus is. So everyone's working on blocks and site editing in Gutenberg, but that doesn't mean that the secondary components aren't important. So yes, there is a core comments Slack channel, and comments is a component in track. It has component maintainers. There are people that are looking and working on improving comments, but there's sort of an order of operations that has to happen, like comment types and those kind of things that that people are just stalled on. So if anyone cares a lot about comments, there's opportunity there, right, to get involved, which I hate saying, but is still true to this day. But also,
you can
like,
get involved.
But like the feature dev that should happen on comments will only happen when like we all start using them again, and we like find ways that we want to improve them. Because right now we all just still turn them off, and we're never going to improve a feature we don't use.
Or there's a plugin that can be merged in.
So what you're saying, I was going to say, so what you're saying is we need to add the block editor to comments, and then people will start working on.
So it's funny.
Yes.
It's funny.
Yes.
It's funny you mentioned that because that was like we had a discussion with BBPress specifically, and I really struggled with imagining what the power of like blocks on a front end theme side type of UI could look or feel like. It just kind of doesn't compute in my imagination. Like giving them all that power seems kind of weird to me, but there is a company called Ubiquity, and they make routers and networking hardware and have some pretty cool open source software stuff too. They recently redid their forums, not using BBPress, they built a homegrown thing, but their comment form, which kind of just looks like blog posts and comments anyways. There's a lot of overlap with all this stuff, right? So, but their form is like a block-based editor, basically. Like it's like you kind of add images and you can add galleries and commas and like code blocks, and it's a very block-based interface. And so it sounds really ridiculous to add Gutenberg to comments, but I think that there is a chance that that could be done well. It would just need to be like a kind of a stripped down, better kind of very sandboxed version of it.
Someone get it in front of Matt and let's start getting.
So they a couple of people tried doing it on the P2s for the make.wordpress.org site. There are like proof of concepts where people have done that. And again, it's basically what it is. It's like a stripped down version of it. But I like right now, I think the editor that is in like the way that Gutenberg is kind of packaged doesn't necessarily make it super obvious like how you could strip it down to something like slimmer for comments. And until that and I think frankly like that requires the Gutenberg team to help, right? Like someone needs to say, this is what we're thinking about trying to do, and can you find a way to build this in a way that makes a slimmer Gutenberg possible? But
well, I think with that, we should definitely have you come back on again, John, and we can discuss a little bit of this. I appreciate it. 30-minute show goes by super fast.
Especially when I'm on it.
Me too. Sorry about that.
It's all good. It's all good. Thank
That's
you
the
very
whole
much
point
for
of the
being on
show.
the show. We really appreciate it, and thank you all for watching. Here's our outro. Thank you. Bye-bye. If you want to help us out, you can support us over on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/WPwatercooler. And here's a fine people that helped us out over there. Thank you very much. Say, how about you do this last part? Tell us a little bit about how we should.
I want you to ring our bell. Ring our bell. Come on over. Join the WordPress conversation. I don't know what you say here. I never pay attention.
Oh, thank you. Well, you should go and subscribe to us as a podcast, as an audio podcast.
Yeah,
we have a lot of folks that help us out with that, and you can go and subscribe to us by going over to WPwatercooler.com/subscribe. Thank you very much for hanging out with us today. We really appreciate it. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.